Well, thank you, Christina, for inviting me, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Kiro, and I am a PhD candidate at Concordia and a Bubble Scholar. I also lead the Waste Not, Want Not Compost Initiative, which is what Christina asked me to talk about today as a practical example of how science communication can drive positive behavior and systemic change. So the problems that we're trying to address at Waste Not is coming from the fact that half of what institutions like Concordia send to landfills every year is organic and can be composted instead. Canada is actually the largest generator of waste per capita in the world. It's not China, it's not India, it's Canada tied to the United States. Landfills are also the fifth leading emitter of methane in Quebec, and methane is a greenhouse gas that captures 70 times more heat than CO2, and it actually constitutes about 15% of what Canada emits in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. So the bottom line here is that waste reduction and composting should become priority one in every institution and every municipality. I'm going to cut to the chase. So Waste Not started in 2016, and ever since then, Concordians have reduced their overall waste by 16%. And by overall waste, I mean landfill plus recycling plus composting, so everything that's being generated on campus. And 16% is the equivalent of 2 months worth of garbage that just simply disappeared per person every single year. Concordia also doubled annual composting since we started, so went from about 43 metric tons a year before Waste Not to about 92 metric tons of organic waste that was composted last year. So the goal of this presentation to me is to talk a little bit about communication going from being a PR tool to a driver of positive systemic change. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of composting at Concordia. So in 2008, a student group called Sustainable Concordia bought an industrial scale composter with student money, and they gave it to the university, and they said, take this composter as a gift, please collect the organics from campus and use this composter to compost on campus, on site. So the university accepted, and they did that, and that actually made Concordia the first university in Quebec to compost on site. And Concordia accepted a bunch of awards for being the first university in Quebec to compost on site. The problem was that the university didn't have enough buy-in, and they didn't maintain the composter properly, and they broke it. So actually, since then until today, the organics that get collected on campus in downtown Montreal gets shipped all the way to Ontario to get composted. That's about 140 kilometers away. And what that translates to is that 13% of the greenhouse gas emissions that Concordia saves because of composting get re-emitted again because of transportation involved in the process, even though there are local alternatives. So this is a company called Compost Montreal here on the island that's about 5 kilometers away from downtown campus. So the lesson here is that the students cannot do this alone. There has to be a credible institutional commitment going alongside it. The second point I want to talk about is that a few years after that, the university actually expanded compost bins in the hall building. So back when I was undergrad, like 100 years ago, they had compost bins in every floor of the whole building for a couple of months. And what happened was that the community, including myself, didn't know how to use these compost bins properly. And so they were so contaminated with things like coffee cups, plastics, and things that are not compostable. They were so contaminated that the university had no choice but to take those bins away. And so the lesson here is that the university cannot do this alone either. The university cannot, cannot just wake up in the morning and say, we're gonna have compost bins everywhere and then problem solved. A multi-stakeholder approach is key. I don't know where this ink is coming from. Okay, so I'm gonna move on now. So those are the lessons that we have tried to implement and learn from when we developed Waste Not. And essentially, the model is to couple top-down infrastructure improvement with grassroots broad impact education. So what happened is, in the year before Waste Not, there were only 9 locations of compost bin, 9 locations that had compost bins in them, and now there's over 100. Now, there are 2 points that are important here. One is that Concordia didn't have the same kind of contamination problems that forced them to to take away those compost bins because there's an effective education campaign happening alongside it. Thank you for ever fix that. The second point here is that there's always a worry when you increase compost bins that the community where those compost bins are gonna be will not accept them because there's these perceptions that there's rodents and there's smell. These perceptions are incorrect, but they exist nonetheless. But these bins were actually very well received. The student group at Concordia in the geography department, when they received their compost bins in a whole building in the 12th floor, they organized a ribbon cutting ceremony. Now, they did not invite me, but they did make a video and they sent it to me. And this sounds a little crappy, but I love the video, so I would like to show it.
Welcome to our compost ceremonial opening. So, as you know, we've been using a compost bin on the 12th floor, which has made students have to go up to the 13th floor, which is not that big of a deal, but it just makes people less inclined to compost. So now we have made it more accessible for you as a compost, and we hope that you will take advantage of this wonderful compost bin. So we would like to proceed with the ceremonial cutting of the ribbon. It's the best time.
Well, so here's the challenge that we're having. Concordia is a two-campus university. There are 55,000 people that come to Concordia. This is essentially the size of a city. There are 12,000 new people that join the community every single year. And so there has to be a recognition that awareness efforts to culture change is like vaccines to herd immunity. You cannot just organize a workshop with 10 people talking about going zero waste perfectly and expect to have an impact. Instead, what you need is to have thousands of people trying. Even if they're making mistakes, you still need thousands of people trying to actually make tangible impact. And so our approach is to focus on broad impact education as opposed to deep impact education. So what that means is that we don't do those hour-long workshops. Instead, we try to talk to as many people as humanly possible, even if it's only for 30 seconds. And what we have learned from the previous 4 years that we have had at Concordia so far is that if we help people take the first small steps of sorting their waste, they will take the bigger steps of reducing their waste on their own. And that gives us confidence that the waste crisis is actually manageable if you work together.
We're Waste Not Whatnot. We're a student organization that promotes composting on campus. We want to let students know what they can compost and where they can compost.
Bins like this with orange lids.
Yeah.
Here for organic waste.
Okay.
So leftover food, soil paper, the popcorn bag go there. The orange lid. Yes. No plastics and no coffee cups.
We're here once a month with our free coffee events. If you bring your own mug, you can have as much coffee as you want. You can find out more about our events on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram.
We also have a team of waste ambassadors who go to events that are organized by anybody, students, staff, professors, administration, anytime throughout the year. And essentially what we do is that if this workshop, for example, was done on campus at Concordia, we want to work with you. And what that means is that we ask you to make sure there's a compost bin, and that's very simple. They call it 3400 and it's free, it takes 30 seconds. And we send you ambassadors to stand next to the waste stations and help people learn how to sort out their waste. Now, to give you an idea of reach, and we have been doing this for 4 years, but just between August of 2019 till the shutdown in March, there were 35,000 people who attended events where our ambassadors are present. This is the equivalent of Concordia's entire undergraduate population. I'd like you to meet the team.
As a waste ambassador, we go to events at Concordia
to educate people on sorting their waste and the importance thereof.
We do this simply by standing next to the waste bins, and we interact with people, we answer their questions.
And it's all about creating awareness among people because they don't know what is the things which can be composted.
And if we start from Concordia, then this will spread to the whole community.
Hier bij Concordia ons compost.
هون بكونكورديا بنعيد تدوير الطعام.
तो यहाँ इन Concordia University में हम कंपोस्ट करते हैं यानी खाद करते हैं.
Εδώ στο Concordia κάνουμε κομποστοποίηση.
Ici à Concordia, on composte.
Here at Concordia, we compost.
So you might have seen some of those pictures in the slides where essentially we ask people to print or sign and write a personal message to encourage the community to become more sustainable. And the goal here is to reach communities that the contemporary sustainability movement doesn't normally reach. So this particular picture from Awatif, her message was to go green this Ramadan. And this was actually picked by Radio Canada International, and they did an interview with her and an article in Arabic to encourage the community to have a green Ramadan. This is Betty from Ghana. This is Canada's ambassador to Switzerland, and there's also a feature on us in Irish Tech. I'm quite unclear of how this one happened, but essentially the goal is to have a very broad reach. So social media is obviously very important, and our social media mission is to connect and learn alongside our community. And what that means is that we want to have collaborative relationships with people inside and outside of Concordia, and be able to create a megaphone that influences decision-making and changes policy. By collaborative relationships, this is not what I'm talking about. So here's the reason, is that people working in sustainability initiatives, like me, when I see institutional communication around climate change, this is what I think about, right? Like we are in a very serious situation. You have somebody who's drowning, raising their hand, calling for help. And instead of helping them, we give them a high five and let them drown. So credibility is super important. And here are a few things that we should keep in mind. One is that it's never your job to manipulate people's perception. One thing that I've learned is that as student groups, people give you the benefit of the doubt, that they don't automatically assume you're doing PR for the university, but you cannot take that for granted. Credibility is a very fragile thing. And so this is something that has to always be protected. We're not out to make anyone look good or bad. And that means that we're not interested in doing PR, and we're also not interested in demonizing everything that moves. Finally, balance is not the same as doing flattering posts for 2 days and critical posts for 2 days. What has to happen is for us to be grounded in reality. And so data and facts has to be your guiding rails, and you must say whatever it is that they tell you. If it's flattering, you should say that. If it's something critical, you should also say that. And communicate that with no spin, just tell the truth unvarnished. So people in Montreal are paying for the climate crisis with their money, with their homes, and with their lives. And the climate strike last year was actually the largest protest in history. And Montreal has the largest turnout of any city anywhere else in the world. And so we're in the right time, and we better be, because according to IPCC, this is the last decade to get our act together. Fortunately, we're also in the right place with the community that's very mobilized and very energized. And our job as communicator is to focus that energy like a laser beam to affect positive systemic change. Thank you.